So I have had my eye on Duelists of Eden for a while. It's a new fighting game based on a popular indie game called One Step from Eden, which in itself is a spiritual successor to Mega Man Battle Network. If you're unfamiliar with those games, just let me give you a quick overview. But first, if you like this sort of content or fighting games in general, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps out a ton. So, back to Duelists of Eden. Each player has a 4x4 square that they can move around. Before battling, you can assemble a deck of 8 to 10 spells, as well as pick a character who has 2 unique skills tied to them. You move around this grid trying to whittle down your opponent's health using a variety of cards that reward a strong and knowledgeable player with some big combos and synergies. And while I've never played One Step from Eden or Battle Network, despite One Step being on my backlog forever, but you know how it is. This game feels really amazing to me, albeit a little bit overwhelming. There is a lot to focus on, and while it is a fighting game, it's very different from the traditional ones, so the fundamentals don't necessarily transfer as easily. But let's just talk about the deck building first. There are a ton of spells that you can put into a deck with a lot of different archetypes you can mix and match. The main categories are lasers, melee, missiles, shot, step, strike, wave, and utility spells. And within each of those categories you have spells that focus on damage, gaining resources, applying status effects, push or pulling an opponent, breaking tiles, or setting up traps. Each spell has a different cost to them, which you can pay with mana. Mana is a resource you can build over time that caps out at 6. It builds slow enough to be able to pull off some devastating combos, but not fast enough to promote spamming. Overall, the deck building feels very deep and allows you to craft just about any playstyle you would want in a game like this. And next we have the characters. Currently there are 14 of them, some of them being guest characters from other popular indie games like Rivals of Aether or Maiden's Spell. Each character has 2 unique spells that can be used at any time. These abilities are very different and have multiple applications, and are really the main thing you are going to be building decks around. But that's enough prep work. Let's talk about how the game actually feels when you're battling. The game is fast, and there is a lot of stuff being thrown at you visually, and while it is all easy to read and readily available, it can be a bit overwhelming, at least to me, and I'm still getting used to it. If you don't have the mental fortitude to hop online and get absolutely destroyed over and over, I highly recommend playing One Step from Eden first to get used to the general game feel. When fighting, you're going to want to learn to optimally spend your mana. While you'll be tempted to throw as many spells as possible, it's an entire skill in itself to learn the various routes your deck might have to allow you to combo off. If you end up spamming your spells, you're going to be left with no mana and nothing to show for it, while you are trying to avoid an oncoming assault of spells from your opponent. And it is very satisfying to learn how each card in your deck is used, the spacing required to land it, getting a good read on your opponent, on their strategy and movements, and trying to do that as fast as possible. And it's also just really satisfying to land a combo in this game. Even though most of my combos right now are a step spell, which basically lets me go on my opponent's side for a quick second, and then I just use that and then I combo it into something simple, like throwing a knife, or maybe like throwing out like a beam rifle thing that applies poison, because I haven't been doing like a poison build, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. The game does have some defensive mechanics. You have a dodge, which costs 1 mana, but has a tight window of an invincibility, and you also have a shield that has a certain amount of life that can be whittled down by attacks, but it also goes down over time if you're holding it. It's really important to be careful with this, because if it does break, you'll be left vulnerable and your opponent instantly gets max mana. So they could very easily punish you with a big combo. The strategy I created for myself was a mix of poison and frost status effects. The character I'm using is called Nira, and I'm just looking to set up my opponent to take big damage from a move called Acid Rain. It's a big area of effect attack that applies poison, but if they have frost stacks on them, it applies even more poison to them. So it's just kind of like balancing those two status effects. And it seems to be working out pretty well so far. I have been really struggling to incorporate those defensive mechanics I talked about earlier. I think it's just something that's not on my brain, and while trying to focus on my own offense is already pretty overwhelming so far, I think I'm getting used to it, and I'm sure it will come with time. I'm about like 5 hours into the game, and I'm having an absolute blast so far. But this build has seen quite a few iterations already. I first tried building it around Dreadworm. She has a beam attack and another unique attack that lets her shoot like these little sword things, but it wasn't really feeling that good. So I then moved on to a character called Chiretta. I think that's how you pronounce it. She's got like a whip that can like push and pull opponents. Like she can push them up or push them back depending on where she hits them with the whip, but I ended up finally deciding to do Nira because it was best suited for this build, and it did add some additional synergy with the Acid Rain because her normal or her unique attacks allow her to apply Frost. And I liked those two previous characters' unique attacks, it just didn't work well. It really has been meshing really well, the poison and the frost with Nira so far, I think. So I just figured, that's probably the best best route to go at least. But overall, I'm liking the game a lot. There is a lot of depth with how to play each and every character. It scratches that perfect itch of both a card game and a fighting game that I never thought I'd see something that does that. And it is definitely going to be a game that is just a staple in my gaming rotation. The game's skill floor definitely takes some work to get up to, either by just like grinding some training mode, grinding against people that will obliterate you, or playing One Step from Eden. Those are all ways to kind of build up your skill, but you will be rewarded with a fun and competitive game that promotes creative deck building and thoughtful strategies, and I 100% recommend this game. And yeah, this game's only $5. I forgot to mention that. It has solid rollback netcode, so you're going to be able to have a very fluid online experience. There's lobbies, there's replays. As mentioned earlier, there's a training mode. I 100% recommend playing this game. Just go buy it. For $5, you might as well just buy it to support the devs. Go. Just absolutely recommend Duelists of Eden. And I hope to see it at future fighting game events, either locally, regionally, at majors. I'm definitely going to want to see some top 8s, and see just how much of the game I'm missing. But as always, keep pressing buttons and have a good rest of your day.